Streaming live via the internet. Welcome to ISP Radio, your weekly source for ISP-related news, events, and interviews with industry experts. If you deliver internet via fiber optic, wireless, coax, or any other way, you're in the right place. Chat live with us weekly via ispradio.com every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And now a brief word from our sponsors. Link Technologies, providing ISP consulting, support, and hardware for wireless ISPs. TowerCoverage.com, providing online RF coverage maps. And now your host for ISP Radio, Steve Grabiel and Dennis Burgess.
Welcome to another edition of ISP Radio. I'm your host, Steve Grabiel, and today I'm broadcasting from my micro knock, if you will, in Edgewood, New Mexico, where I'm currently fusion splicing fiber. I've already done 24 strands, 12 strands. I got another 24 to go. And then I just got back from out in the field. We were pulling our 72-strand fiber, threading it through our directional holes or conduits we put in the ground with our directional drill. Man, that cable is heavy. 3,000 feet of cable is like 1,000 pounds, and it was on a spool, but we got it unspooled. Now we're pulling it back to string it through. Kind of hard work, but weather's been good out here. Got kind of a flood yesterday when I was plowing the cable in the ground, so I had to kind of stop, but it sure made the digging conditions a lot easier with the moisture. But that's what's going on in my world. The wireless side of the business seems to be holding up through lightning season here and monsoon, so I'm really grateful for that. So, Dennis, what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, I'll tell you what, not a whole lot. I mean, we've been busy, as always. You know, Link Technologies is real busy. We announced our new PowerLink product that we talked about last week, and we got quite a few emails saying, "Oh, well, when they're actually in stock, in shipping, let us know." And we've had some in stock, but then we finally are getting all of our large orders in and things like that. And believe it or not, our actual initial production run has actually not all of them. The 8 watts are still available, but the 15 watts are already sold out. So it's actually kind of it's a good thing for us, but bad thing that we didn't anticipate the need of the 15 watters. So it's not a problem. We are getting in the parts to manufacture everything we need for more of them. So if you have an order already, and again, everything's really going to be going out tomorrow for the most part. If you have an order, but don't forget to order early, because if you don't, then we want to make sure. And keep in mind, we'll have them at Wispapalooza too, as well. So quite a few of those going on and going out, etc. All really good stuff. Lots of jobs. We got new IPv6 stuff, a lot of IPv6 stuff, a lot of BGP. And plenty of other projects. So we're keeping busy, man. We're keeping busy. How's that?
Yeah, busy's better than sitting there twiddling your thumbs, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. And we're definitely been busy. So all good stuff, like I said.
Plus it puts food on the table.
The wife likes that.
Yeah. Any other WISPA news or industry news that you've heard of or anything like that? How the elections are going?
Actually, you know what? The elections are done. So anybody, if you haven't voted, well, you're kind of SOL, because the voting is done, and guess what? I have the election results. So yeah, there you go. So the board members. So we had what was it? 1, 2, I think it was 5. 5 positions available. Based on those, we have those 5 positions, and the either re-elected or newly elected board members for those 5 positions are in order. Is going to be Alex Phillips. Myself, Dennis Burgess. We have Jimmy Carr, who was on the show, what was it, last week?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We have Garth Nicholas and Mike Whelan.
Oh, good.
So congratulations to all of those
congratulations.
candidates.
Good. And there was 7 candidates that ran, so that's a good sign.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. So good stuff.
Excellent. And the agendas for Fiber Weekend and Wispapalooza are out, complete, ready to go?
Yeah, that's all up and running, already up on the wispa.org site. Make sure you check that out. Wispapalooza is coming up. Very, very important. There is going to be a Mid-Atlantic meeting, August 25th, at the end of this month. For those of you that are looking for state meetings or smaller meetings, this is literally a one-day event. It's on a Thursday, kind of an odd day. It's very inexpensive. It's going to be at the Embassy Suites at Dulles North. So I'm looking at, up at, it's basically 5 miles from Washington Dulles International Airport. I don't have a whole lot. All the information's online. It's like $25 to go. So if you're up in that area and you can drive there, again, a quick one-day meeting, really good stuff, and I would hope that everybody can hit that. But if you can't, remember, Wispapalooza is just around the corner. That is the big one. Everybody should be attending.
Exactly. Well, with that, I'm happy to have back on the show with us one of our show sponsors, Brian Smith with Advanced LLC. Brian's a broker for all of the big telcos for bandwidth, and Brian wanted to be on the show to tell us about what's going on since we last talked. So Brian, thank you for being on the show. We appreciate it, and we appreciate your sponsorship of the show.
Thank you very much, Stephen and Dennis. I value the opportunity. It's been quite educational, to say the least. I grew up on the wireline side of things. I worked for a traditional ISP doing ATM, frame, and DSL type services, and to learn what the WISP industry is doing and the technology behind it, and it's vast and it's impressive. I kind of miss that side of things, but I haven't touched a router since 2005, and that might be a blessing for everyone. Today kind of want to talk about what we talked about CenturyLink Wave and how to use Wave services and their data center promotion and things of that nature. And now we're talking about how do we gain access to the peering exchanges, lower cost routes through someone like Hurricane Electric, and really diversify your peering. And some of the things we've been doing recently, like coming out of Montana or Wyoming or going to Denver or Seattle in a private line service, hitting these peering exchanges where you can get direct access to Netflix, and then full BGP routes through someone like Hurricane Electric. And it can be really, really eloquent, where the customer doesn't need electronics on each end, on the remote end. They simply get a single mode fiber cross connect, and the real trick is finding the last mile provider in the, say if it's Stevensville, Montana. Well, we know it's CenturyLink. So how do we get from Stevensville out to Seattle? We use their Wave platform, and ideally a location we don't get charged local access, like the Seattle Weston building. And we can buy a third-party cross-connect to the SIX, the Seattle Internet Exchange. And from there, Hurricane Electric will allow us to do direct peering and full BGP routes through a single interface. So, for instance, we might get a 10 gig wave from Stevensville, Montana for about $3,000 out to Seattle, and a cross connect for $125. And then the minimum allocation from Hurricane would be $400 through that single interface. So you have access to a 1 gig commit of IP transit and up to 10 gigs burstable, but then you can also do the direct peering with Netflix, MSN, Google, Akamai, anyone that's peered there, anyone that's regional is peered there. All the larger providers use it. I know Forbes, Mercy, he has direct access there as well as one of his priorities when he built a second leg for his network. And it's been a valuable and great way to lower your true transit use by doing the direct regional peering and the peering to the people you need to talk to most, whether it's Google or MSN updates or other your friends and family might be using independent ISPs. Hopefully people promote that use, and it can be as simple as that. So the challenges I've been running into is working with some people on the East Coast and their local MSO is Comcast, and the ILEC might be AT&T. Well, AT&T inter-LATA, crossing state boundaries, crossing LATAs, their pricing's, it doesn't make sense, it's not cost effective. But Comcast does a great job, but they're not in all the peering exchanges. Like, you can't go to Telex New York and do what I'm talking about to get, use that peering exchange to hit Netflix and also get Hurricane, because Comcast isn't there. So we look for like facilities where both the last mile provider in the town, the peering exchange is available with that carrier, and then making sure that Hurricane and maybe someone like Netflix is also at that peering exchange, because not all three are in all places.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
In your example, you mentioned, $3,000 CenturyLink. Is that just purely transit, or is that internet?
Oh, transport only. When we use Wave, it's private. There's no electronics. They don't put any routers on in between. It's clear light end to end, and it's true private line. So they can offer their own IP transit on that last mile facility, but it's kind of what's your real need today? Do you want route diversity? You want better peering? You want higher bandwidth? If you're trying to do 100 meg, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not going to be cost effective to where you want to be. If you're at a gig or up to 10 gig, it'd be very cost effective. You can get that first gig, you're at 34 cents a meg.
Right.
If everything falls in line. It's a current fiber lit building. There's no build out costs to get to the customer location. And many times the fiber is already there because these carriers, the service providers, the WISPs, are already using Comcast or a CenturyLink, and so they have fiber on-prem, and it comes right off their existing fiber distribution panel without any other edge switches.
Really? So it's just unplugging the SFP and plugging the SFP into your own gear, huh?
Well, it depends. Like, say if it's CenturyLink, currently the legacy type service is Ella, where they put a Cisco 3750 on-prem.
Right.
It can be that simple, where we do a hot cut, plug it into the new fiber distribution panel, assign ports, and now you're light up to the next end. If you want to do a true hot cut from an Ella type facility to a private line facility. And the nice thing is their contract language with QCC allows you to upgrade. So say if you had a 300 meg internet commit with CenturyLink and you didn't need their IP, maybe you don't need their IPv4, you have your own allocation, it's an easy switch for you.
Mm-hmm.
And we can contractually use the upgrade languages in the contracts to move you forward. And it can be that simple, plug and play, as a hot cut. As long as you're, a lot of people like to have two interfaces, so they bring one up, test, 24 hours, and then decommission the outgoing.
Ah. So it would be like a biddy situation, bidirectional, one strand?
Using wave, dense wave division multiplexing, it's color. So
right.
Off the fiber distribution panel, they get an A and a B, and on the remote end, they get an A and a B channel. So
yeah, I think
I'm not understanding. Pardon?
We're talking the same language.
Okay. Tomato, tomato, right?
Yeah. It's like my old, I did buy a CenturyLink ATM circuit, and they put this big monster ATM box in the knock, and then I had to go out and get a Cisco, like you said. But it's fiber fed, and to me, what you're telling me is that the fiber that comes into that building could bypass all of that nonsense and plug directly into my MikroTik, if you will.
Exactly.
Wow, that's cool.
Those Fujitsu FLM gear, they can be decommissioned. I just learned one of my customers, says he has to have insurance for that equipment. If he has a fire or whatever, it has to cover that cost. Well, he's asked for them to pull that equipment because he doesn't need it anymore.
Right. Right. So tell us some stories of some successes you've had in converting people to this Wave product and cross-connecting with Hurricane. I mean, you mentioned Forbes.
Well, Forbes was unique. He's got maybe he doesn't want me to tell, I don't know, but he was using the MSO in his area, and he needed a second leg, wanted bigger bandwidth, and so CenturyLink was a good fit. We tried Level 3, we tried Zayo. I think he even tried NoaNet, which is a local Washington fiber line provider. They do private transport over the BPA, Bonneville Power Administration easements, and but we got him to the Seattle Internet Exchange for, I think it was $1,600 a month for a 1 gig private line to the 6. Now he elected to put his own gear there because he wanted to do his own BGP between upstreams. He chose to do that. That was his option, but you don't have to. So I think he values it because he gets more bandwidth, he gets better peering regionally, and I guess that's a success. My customer out of Stevensville, Montana, that I mentioned earlier, 3 years ago, we built fiber to his home, which is just down the street from the school, and his property was zoned commercial. So he's got a knock there, and we built initially a maybe 300 or 500 meg. He had 300 meg, so we built a 500 meg facility. It was burstable. And then in the last year, he's had such success, he has upgraded to a 10 gig interface with CenturyLink IP with a 1 gig commit, and that, again, that's burstable. But even more recently, he wants direct access to Netflix, so we're doing this Wave private line to Seattle. And so he went from using 300 megs, he thought he was locked, couldn't get fiber where he wanted to, and through this new product change with CenturyLink, it's allowed him to grow. He's adding, I think, conservatively a customer a day, and just doing really well. I know he'll scratch my back when I need it. So,
well, one interesting thing is as a broker of these services, you reach out for the best deal to deliver it to whoever, wherever. That's an interesting part of what you do.
Yeah, my goal is to save someone money, or at least find what options are available. And maybe I can't save them, but sometimes, there's customers out of one recently who contacted me through your radio show. It's in Nixa, Missouri, and initially we found that AT&T was cost effective for him, and then he beat up his current provider, and they renegotiated. So I can't always compete, but I can at least offer a quote that'll help you get lower rates from your current provider. Maybe they'll renegotiate with you. I don't mind doing the work. I like the relationship building. It's what I've been able to sit here on this side of the fence for the last decade. But my goal again is to source options, give you information what's available on that side of the fence, and ideally save you money or give you better routes, or at least something to think about.
Are there some newer names of the transit providers out there that you've begun representing?
Well, I work with Hurricane more recently, Hurricane Electric. Minimum allocation might be a gig. They're at $400 for a full gig of transit. That's unheard of compared to a level 3, a Zayo, CenturyLink. They won't get close. They won't do it. I think they have more infrastructure to manage and support, so they can't really, where Hurricane puts in a switch and say an Equinix facility and sharing their private line around the town or around the nation or globally, and they don't have the layer 1 or the full infrastructure that some of these carriers have.
Right.
I do work with Cogent, and they'll match pricing at many times. I've heard their network has been augmented recently. I also represent some local companies like ELI or Integra here in Portland, and I try to be diverse. Where I like CenturyLink, but I tell them all the time the hardest part of my job should be getting ink on a contract, not placing an order. And I've seen some people talk about the timeline to install, and that's kind of the thing. if you're doing planning, you need more bandwidth, you should be thinking about it 6 months and a year in advance and forecasting. Because these carriers, especially if they have a small fiber build, you may say that they have fiber at your prem, they got to augment equipment out of that town, across, borders, state lines, and it's a big project for them. And, they'll have 100 job steps for every order. So it's not simple as people think. The carrier world really, I don't know if it's them being regulated, because Comcast and say Time Warner are elegant. They'll deliver in 30 to 60 days, even with a build. But essentially, it's been really challenging to work with. I don't mean to bag on them, but it's if you have patience, the end result is you'll get a quality product. You'll get something that's resilient. You'll get something that's fairly cost effective. I mean, like I said, we had a recent quote for a 10 gig wave out of Evanston, Wyoming to Denver, Colorado for $2,800. I mean, that's a sizable pipe, $2,800 a month. That's,
You bet it is.
So if you have patience, you'll get value.
Now, you mentioned it sounds like AT&T was is AT&T more difficult to deal with than CenturyLink, in your opinion?
What's odd is AT&T and AT&T, Verizon, CenturyLink are all regulated. But when I try and get a private line facility crossing lattice, crossing state boundaries from AT&T or Verizon, it doesn't even come close to what CenturyLink's offering on their unregulated side, the QCC side, the Legacy Quest. And so with AT&T, we've been doing intra-LATA options, but there again, I think a 1 gig intra-LATA might be $2,600. The 10 gig, they're not even supporting it on that platform. Now, someone like Time Warner, so I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I recently did a project in San Antonio, and Time Warner's offering a Wave private line, but they're putting their electronics, a DWDM switch, on the customer prem on both sides. And so it's odd to me how each carrier has designed their service offering. And in my opinion, Time Warner could minimize their costs. The building we're taking it to in San Antonio is a 33-story facility with multiple tenants, people that already use it or use them as a carrier, and they would, in my opinion, have one common meeting room and a single DWDM switch there, and simply offer a single fiber. But in this case, they're putting a DWDM switch in my customer's suite. Now they came back with a 10 gig price, private line, to this small. It's not a Netflix peering exchange, but it is a local peer. There's lots of companies there, and I think we're doing 10 gig for $3,200, which is not bad.
Yeah, no.
So I guess the short of it, all the carriers haven't designed the same product. They've all done their own brand of delivery, and they've engineered it different. And so it's AT&T, they won't cross lattice and offer an elegant price, where CenturyLink will. Verizon traditionally has been, they're just not cost effective from what I see. And sometimes, we have customers that are wholesale and retail. Sometimes they have a wholesale relationship, they get better pricing. Sometimes they have a wholesale relationship, they get worse pricing than retail. So it's really a matter of discovery, do your due diligence, see what's out there, get multiple quotes, and then go from there.
Right, and that's the services you offer.
That's my goal. Again, to offer a couple options when available. I can't always offer a couple options, but my goal is to see what's there. And we have some nice tools these days that we didn't have before. I'll promote it. Carrier Finder is a peer of mine's application, if you will, that allows you to log in, put in an address, and see all the carriers and existing fiber-lit buildings in a town. Now, it's not totally complete. Like Frontier doesn't give us their information for fiber-lit buildings. We've got to do their standard quoting process. But we've got everything from Zayo, the data centers, from CenturyLink, Hurricane, a lot of the small regional MSOs, Light Edge, FiberLight. So we've got, I would say a good 90 to 95% concentration of what's available out there as far as what the carriers have given us. And that doesn't, if say Comcast gives us, 10,000 lit buildings, but that's from 2015, recent projects will probably give us another download in a year with an update of that. So it's always 100% accurate, but it's a great tool. And we didn't have these tools before. We've you struggle to find the MPA NXX to understand who is the local ILEC or who is the local MSO there. I used to have to use 3 and 4 tools to just understand who I can work with, and now this tool has helped me streamline that, which is effective for someone like the ISPs that they want to know now. They want to know lit buildings because the wireless industry, they can choose to go to a tower versus having fiber built to their prem. Maybe their NOC isn't at their main office. So providing information like fiber lit buildings, the circumference of say 5 or 10 miles between you and a local building, it just helps you understand what's available, what's out there, and why things cost so much. We've gotten some quotes out of Wisconsin recently that for the same 1 gig facility, you're talking $5,500 to go to Minnesota, and that doesn't meet everyone's budget. They want more bandwidth, but budgetarily, $5,500 for a single gig doesn't work for them. That's just the private line. That's not even any IPv4, IPv6 routes out of that facility or cross connect feeds. So when I mentioned earlier the Wave product and what's the most elegant, we've been talking, how to get to Netflix, how you get the lowest bang for your buck, and one of the things I like the 6. We have a single mode fiber cross connect there for $125. If I go to the Phoenix NAP, it's a 0 monthly charge. 401 Broad Street in Pennsylvania is a 0 charge cross connect. So that the real goal is how do we find the peering you want using your local MSO or incumbent and get the best bang for your buck. There's some companies like CoreSite and Equinix now want you to buy co-location from them to even come to their facilities or their peering exchange. So that's $600 to $1,000 a month that doesn't meet the budget. Kind of some tangents, random stuff there, but it's a discovery in your region. What's available? How do you get there? And each time sometimes it takes 3 and 4 weeks to get firm pricing. So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with you. You've given me some quotes on some Wave products. Unfortunately, like I told you before, I wish you'd have come to me months before, because when I was dealing with Quest myself personally, I was capped off at 30 megs with an ATM circuit, and it was driving me nuts. And I asked them, can you please put in a Mo service out here? Nope, we'll never do it. And then they turned into CenturyLink, and then I started talking to you. Oh yeah, we can get you a Wave out there. Well, doggone it. I wouldn't invest in all these high dollar microwaves.
Yeah, well, your license infrastructure probably is pretty resilient and effective for you. So
no, it'll be
when you're looking for a secondary gateway or route, that's where we can talk. Maybe we go to the Phoenix NAP out of New Mexico,
right?
Or look for something that gets you access to Netflix direct.
Right. Well, there'll be a point where I pay off those leases, and we'll definitely be talking. Hey, Dennis, you got any questions for Brian?
No. Most of this stuff we've talked about in the past on the radio show, so that's always a really good thing, if you know what I mean. And overall, there's definitely not a problem with this. What Brian is talking about, for those of you that are kind of coming into this conversation after the fact, is most people they handle buying bandwidth by going to a transit provider, i.e. one provider typically, and then they buy IP transit. In other words, they go, hey, I want internet access. Then some other people, they go to these providers, same thing, and they go, hey, I want to be more redundant, so I want to buy internet access. And that's what they're doing. There's not a problem with doing that by any means, but what Brian is specifically stating here or saying is that in many cases, transport, in other words, getting a circuit, think of it as an Ethernet extension cable, a piece of fiber from location A to location B, typically, especially into a internet exchange, could be more cost effective. And I'll mention a customer of ours, actually a mutual customer of me and Brian's. But the example was that he was buying transit from the local provider in his town. Brian got him transit back to a internet exchange, a big exchange, lots of good stuff on it. And then we simply put a router in place and then did BGP peering on the exchange. Now, why is that important? Well, the cost of his IP transit, the cost of his internet access in the town that he was in, that he services and spreads out from, is very high. Figure he's paying, I think, like $8 a meg or $9 a meg for a several hundred meg circuit. He bought a gig wave from, I believe Brian did it, and went to this internet exchange. And once we turned on that circuit, he was well below $2 a meg delivered to his facility. So all of a sudden you go from $8 or $10 a meg for IP transit locally to, less than $2 a meg to this internet exchange. Now, the big thing about internet exchanges is that this, in general, is not internet access. Now, let me kind of explain that to you. Some exchanges, sometimes they'll sit there and they'll give you a full routing table, but most exchanges you don't really get a full routing table from. You get who is connected to that exchange. That's the whole point of that exchange. So I'm going to use an example of this particular one was going back to the Seattle 6. The Seattle 6 has everybody on it. I mean, we're talking Google, Netflix, Hulu, just anybody you could possibly imagine. The customer had a 300 meg circuit that he was maxing out. We brought up the Seattle 6 exchange and immediately had 380 meg on the exchange, plus another 100 meg still on his original circuit. So the example being here is that it was cheaper to go to the exchange and directly peer with all these companies and peer with the exchange to get direct access to those companies' data. Okay, and then he uses his the last part of it, which is either the cross connect to his exchange or, in his case, the IP transit locally for anything extra that he can't normally get to. Okay, over that exchange. But to be very blunt, 98% of his traffic, in this case, this exchange is very well connected. 98% of his traffic is flowing over that exchange at the much reduced rate from $10 a meg to $2 a meg by the time it's all said and done. And a lot of people think that the going through two providers is more expensive, but what we find, as Brian was saying, is that especially local incumbents, they are tariffed. They have to charge you a specific rate, and if you're going intraladder? Interladder. If you're going interladder, it can get really expensive really, really quick. So because of that, a lot of these cable companies and these fiber line providers, they can give you transit or transport from point A to point B much, much cheaper than IP access is what we find. And then you get into a data center in which you can pick up a large data pipe for pennies on the dollar compared to being out there in the middle of nowhere. So Wi-Fi Midwest, which is our local provider here, that's actually how they do it. They actually purchase layer 2 from the local cable company back to the data center. The data center they purchase from a tier 1 provider, a large international transit company or IP network company. But once you get up there, it's, as Brian was saying, Hurricane, it's $400 or $500 for a gig. Big whoop-de-doo. Okay? But that transport is where the cost is in this particular case. But the local ILEC, AT&T, would be almost $2,000. Actually, it's more than that. It's actually like $2,200 or something like that, just to get a 150 meg circuit. They're very, very expensive whenever you look at the comparison. And it really just comes down to price per meg is really what you're looking at. So, really good stuff. And actually, Brian, I don't know if you've seen. I sent you an email yesterday.
I'm looking at something now from 924.
Well, I got something for you today, and then I also sent you one another mutual customer that they're having.
Milo.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, that's I've been. If anybody follows my Facebook, I'm gonna tell you right now. I actually posted yesterday on Facebook and said, I am in CenturyLink, hold hell, and I ran out of beer.
Oh, that's even worse.
Oh, it was. I mean, we're talking. I called their tech support number to get support with a fiber line circuit, and it took me. They transferred me 7 times to get to a person that could enter a ticket. And that's the worst part. They were just wanting to enter a ticket. I already had 2 tickets open. They couldn't even call me back. It was just a complete mess of 2 days. But the point being here was that I sent you some stuff over there, and hopefully we'll get Brian will get some business out of it. But really good stuff on getting to the peering exchanges. I'm going to give you another example since we have a little time here. Actually, in St. Louis, we do not have a peering exchange yet. The Midwest IAX is coming to St. Louis. They've already, all the contract negotiations, it's all done already. We are actually going to be one of the, or Wi-Fi Midwest is actually going to be one of the very first peers on it. We're actually going to be picking up data center space in the Meet Me room there, so we're actually be putting routers up there for that. We're actually going to do transit out of there. And we're going to be delivering multiple circuits. So small ISPs, smaller providers, I'm going to give you this kind of a nifty thing. If you can get into a peering exchange along with a IP transit provider up at a data center with a router at a data center, all of a sudden the world really opens up to you. And let me explain why. For a lot of things that we have, we want fiber transit out to our network, which is very, very important. Okay, and of course we have that. That's that's not a big deal. Most providers have that. But what can you do for your backup? How do you manage what I would call non-same path or out of band management / redundancy? So the example being, if I'm using the cell phone company, or I'm sorry, the cable company for transit now, I need another provider. Somebody completely different, so the local ILEC, another fiber line provider, it doesn't matter who it is. I need another one in case their network messes up. I need to be able to get data out to my clients. So we find, or at least I find, that there's a lot of customers out there, a lot of my customers apparently, that will have cable modems, or they'll have DSLs, or they'll have something in a spot or two around their network that they can get cable access. And nowadays, cable modems, we're seeing 80, 100, 200 meg out of them in some cases. So having a router up at the data center and doing your peering up there may allow you to be able to build tunnels over the cable network to deliver your actual IP and IPv6 transit over those cable modems, where a lot of times in the U.S. it's really odd because cable modems typically in DSL don't allow you to do BGP. 99%. I don't know of any in the U.S. But over in Europe, you can get BGP on a 6 meg